All right. Hi, everyone. It looks like we're live on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. I'm Nirupam from the Underwater Photography Guide and Blue Water Photo, and I run the Ocean Art Underwater Photography Contest, which is one of the world's largest underwater photography contests. And this year, in 2024, our conservation winner was Kimber Greenwood, who I have here today. Thanks, Kimber, for joining us. This is going to be an interview about her work and also her conservation efforts to help conserve Florida springs. Her stories were extremely compelling for the winning conservation photo. And she actually had multiple other images enter the final rounds of the competition, which told the full story of her work. And I just wanted her to be able to get that work out there and kind of share it with us, and be able to explain, exactly what is going on with Florida Springs and what we can all do to help. So thanks, Kimber, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nirupam. I'm excited to be here.
Um, Great. So I'm going to start with some of my questions, but feel free to kind of interrupt my flow as well.
All
And
right.
I'd love to actually go through your work and kind of just take a look at this full photo series. And actually, why don't we start with that? I'm going to go off script a little bit. Can you walk us through this photo series that you have, as well as your winning image, and just explain exactly what the conservation issue is for our viewers?
Absolutely. So, if you're not familiar, Florida is full of these beautiful springs. It's where the majority of our drinking water comes from. And these are incredibly unique ecosystems. There are very few other places in the world like what we have here. So, these are literally a national treasure. And what the springs are is it is an aquifer where water is fresh, beautiful, drinkable spring water is coming out at thousands of gallons per minute. And it's creating a habitat where not only does it nourish manatees and eelgrasses and fish and tons of animal species, but it also nourishes us. This is the source of where almost all of our drinking water comes from, and unfortunately, almost all of our bottled water too. So I've sat on the Communications Advisory Board for the Florida Springs Council for the last few years. Now I'm one of their emeritus advisory board members. And the Florida Springs Council is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to saving our springs through policy change. So they are interested in doing so many things at the federal level, at the state level, whatever they can to push through legislation that puts protections in place for these springs. Because we really want to keep having them for future generations and for our own preservation as a species. So these are vitally important pieces of land to protect, and they're honestly, there's nothing else like them. So I fell in love with the springs all the way. Wow, I'm going to age myself here, but I was in college about almost 20 years ago. And I came here for scientific diving and a cavern diving course. And from the first moment that I saw the springs, I fell in love. I skipped my college graduation, I loaded up my car, and I drove here, and I've never left. So my heart has been here ever since I first discovered them. I'm originally from Ohio, so this is paradise. Not that Ohio's bad, but we love our springs. So I've teamed up with the Communications Advisory Board and others, members of the Florida Springs Council, and we won a grant to create a photo series that would feature the Florida Springs and our conservation efforts. So this series is twofold. It documents both the effects of plastic water bottling, which is a very real threat to this area. In fact, the spring that you're going to see featured in a lot of these images, there's a nearby water bottling plant that was built, and we actually were able to obtain bottles from that plant for this shoot because it has been a very real threat. They are draining over 1 million gallons a day from our springs. So we're starting to see the effects everywhere. So that was one part of this campaign. And then the second part is the effect of fertilizers. So I know you've probably been told that it's really good to buy local and to support local agriculture. And that is true almost everywhere in the world except for North Florida. And the reason for that is because our ground here, we're on limestone, and limestone is very, very porous. So as large farming operations are putting these fertilizers on the crops, it's seeping through the limestone and it's going into our water. And so then we start having huge issues in the water. And I'm going to show you that in these photos and kind of take you through and show you the damage that is being done in real time today. So, can I open up some of the images?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, all right, here we go. So, the first part of this image, we wanted to be able to show what it's like for the future generations, where we're headed versus where we've been. So, in this image, I actually used my own child and we rented a canoe and we went out, and these are two springs that they're not far apart. They're maybe a 25-minute drive apart from each other. So this first part, this is a cleaner, healthier spring with the crystal blue water that we're used to seeing. This is how you typically see springs portrayed in the media. This is what it's historically been. This is what it was when he was a child and what he grew up enjoying. But now our springs are looking like this. Because of the fertilizer use, the high nitrates in these products, it's causing a proliferation of this really gross filamentous green algae. And the bottom it's going from beautiful sandy rock, natural native plants like eelgrass to this disgusting slime. And that's what my child has to look forward to if we don't fix this problem. So this was one of the images that we created for it. This series over here, this dress that we handmade this dress. It's made out of hundreds of plastic bottles that were collected from a conservationist in our springs. And these bottles, so the water bottling plant that is threatening this spring, it puts out over 6,000 plastic bottles a minute. The hundreds of
Wow,
bottles of in this dress, it only represents 2 to 3 seconds worth of plastic production. So
that's pretty incredible. That's a huge amount of plastic. That-
it is. It's a huge amount of plastic, and it's happening every hour, every day. There's no days that they take off from this. It is constant, and that's just one of these plants. There's many others. So this is just the one that is affecting my personal backyard. So we created this dress out of plastic trash, and I cut the bottles, we washed them, we burned them into the shape of flowers, and we created a gown to hopefully raise awareness. So all of these bottles, just a couple seconds worth of production at one plant. So that is one section. And that was how we wanted to show when we were creating images like this, we really wanted to show the effects of the plastic, of the actual measurable, quantifiable effects of plastic bottling on our springs. And so that's what brings me to my image that won first place, which very silly, it feels surreal to say that. So thank you. Very exciting. But this image was created with bottles that we got from a conservationist who has collected them. And this, like I said, all of this plastic, all of this that is surrounding her, we're talking a couple seconds. This isn't hours of production. This isn't days. This is just a couple seconds. And this is what a lot of people go through in a few weeks in their own home. So we really want to raise awareness that basically we are just taking our own spring water, we're selling it back to ourselves, and we're creating a ton of trash in the process. It doesn't make sense. So
Yeah, it's a bit of an oxymoron in a way. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but it's poetic in a bad way.
yes.
Uh, yeah. And did these water bottles, did they come from the plant or from the springs?
So the conservationist, she actually went and toured the plant and was able to take a bunch of bottles with her. And then some of them she's collected over her years of cleaning up the springs. So it was a good mix of both. And then to prep them for this shoot, because we obviously don't want to leave any trash behind, if you look closely, you can see that each bottle is tied together. So we washed them, dried them, hand tied them together so that we wouldn't be part of the problem.
Right. Okay. Um, yeah, no, it's an extremely compelling photo. And this was in the spring itself, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. And to get it, we really wanted to minimize how much gear we were bringing out to the springs, how much foot traffic we're doing, we can't bring the big studio lights or bring all the ladders. So it was just me, my model, a helper, and I climbed a tree and tried not to
Okay.
fall so that we could get this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like a nice mix of natural light. So I'm guessing that's where like the shadow and the extra light around her arm is coming from. It's
Yeah,
all the tree branches.
exactly.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll let you continue with the series. Sure.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Okay, and then the second part, we wanted to talk about the issues with algae and the proliferation of the nitrate use fertilizers in our Florida aquifer. So, when we had to think of how are we going to show fertilizer use, that's really difficult to quantify, right? I mean, how do you interact with fertilizer in your daily life? Like that's a hard question to sit there and instantly answer because it's not a product that we have a lot of use daily interaction with unless you're in agriculture, right?
Right.
So the way that most regular people like us would interact with fertilizer is through our yards. A lot of people, they really pride themselves on having a beautiful yard. Many people live in an HOA where we're expected to have these monoculture green grass yards, and you're expected to fertilize. So that's really the only way that the average everyday person would, come into working with fertilizers. So we wanted to show that by having a beautiful green yard, you're also creating green water. You're creating a green spring. So that's what we wanted to show with this. And we wanted to kind of go it from the home owner sort of view and make people think twice about fertilizing their yards. And this is what it looks like under the water. This
Wow.
spring, this spring used to be famous for the manatees that would come here and visit. It used to be famous every winter. This spring would be packed full of manatees, and it was known for, and the reason because of that is because it used to support eelgrass, which is a major staple in a manatee's diet. So every winter, when the ocean gets cold, the manatees would come in, they'd snack on the eelgrass, they'd hang out in the warmer spring water, and we could all go see them and enjoy them. However, this spring has become very contaminated with lots of fertilizer. It caused a proliferation of this disgusting green algae. And in doing so, it suffocated out the eelgrass. There's no more eelgrass, there's no more manatee food, and there's no more manatees coming to the spring anymore. So it's really sad. It's really sad how much it's changed. One of our models for the shoot, she actually cried because she grew up going to the spring and it was a magical, beautiful place when she was a kid. And coming back and seeing it looking like this, honestly, it broke her heart. So
Yeah,
this is what it looks like now.
it's a very personal connection that you have to the actual story itself, which is not always the case. Like in other ocean conservation concepts, like if you're looking at like ghost fishing, most people don't go down and see a ghost fishing net,
Right.
but this is like right in your backyard.
Yes. And it affects all of us. People up north, they don't think it does, but every time you buy the bottled spring water, this does impact all of us. These resources won't be here forever if we don't take care of them. And I know you've seen those really distressing images of like the starving manatees and the manatee die-offs.
Yeah.
This is all directly related. So, yeah, this is very personal to me. It's something that it means a lot to me. I think you can tell.
Yeah.
It's something I'm very passionate about, and I want to get involved in and raise awareness as much as I can about our springs. So this is not edited in any way. I did not add any algae to this image. This is here. All I did was drop the sign right on top of it and step back.
Well,
This is this is
oh,
it.
so I might be skipping ahead here, but you mentioned that you know, I guess I was curious for the viewer that's watching this and seeing this story, what would you recommend that they do as an alternative to maybe buying spring water that could help solve this problem?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, just get a filter for your home tap water if it tastes bad. Every time I know that as Floridians, we're always told, you should buy bottled water to have for hurricanes. And yes, if you need to do that, absolutely buy filtered water. You can read the label and it will tell you where the water is from. It will tell you the source. So you don't want anything that says spring water. You want something that says filtered water. And that way you know that it's literally just off the tap. It's been filtered for taste, maybe some minerals added and it's been bottled, but it's not actively draining these places.
Okay. And do you know of some brands that would sell that kind of bottled water for those viewers that, don't want to give up their bottled water, but they want to help protect springs?
Yeah, so I believe I believe Dasani is filtered water, and I
Okay.
know people have some hard feelings about that one sometimes. But I can tell you also, I don't know every brand in particular, but the worst ones are going to be Nestle and Zephyr Hills. Those are the ones that are actively bottling here in my
Right.
backyard that proudly advertise spring water on the bottle.
Okay. That's good to know. I think that'll be really helpful for our viewers so they can make that active decision when they're at the supermarket.
Yeah, reading labels is huge for us as consumers because we don't have a lot of opportunities to hit back at multi-billion-dollar corporations, but by choosing to buy different products, we're putting our dollars where our values are.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Great. Well then, do you have more in the photo series or?
Do. So we also, well, let's see. So that's what the springs are supposed to look like.
Wow.
Beautiful blue, crystal clear, you know, and unfortunately, that is not always the case. And then we also wanted to show that our springs are really vulnerable. So we had a nude model and, came out and we just really wanted to show how vulnerable it feels to be touching this slimy grass, to be down in this, having it touch you. Our springs are vulnerable. They are naked, and it's up to us to protect them and to stand in for them. So that's something that we really wanted to convey with this series is just the vulnerability of these ecosystems, how fragile they are. They seem like they're prehistoric, that they've been around for forever, they're going to be around for forever. But that's really not the case if we don't step up, do our part, enact legislation that will protect them, and then also as consumers make better choices as we can.
For our Florida viewers out there, do you have like legislation that you currently support or that you think people should write to their local official about or anything like that?
Absolutely. So they can get involved with the Florida Springs Council. It is very, very, very easy to get involved. They have an active Facebook group and they will constantly put out calls for legislation. They will help you write letters to senators, to Congress people. And then a few times a year, they actually go to our state capitol in Tallahassee and they introduce bills and they bring volunteers along with them to tell their stories. So if you're a Floridian who really cares, you want to get involved, reach out to the Florida Springs Council. This is a wonderful organization that has been fighting really, really tirelessly on behalf of our springs for many years now. So I highly recommend them.
That's great to know. And is there a way or place that they can donate as well?
Absolutely. You can become a member of the Florida Springs Council. You can set up a monthly donation, and in return, they send you these really awesome stickers that some of them are really funny. It's like, ew, you drink bottled water, or they have manatees, and they're really fun. So we get those. We love seeing them, and it's nice knowing that our money's going to help a great cause and, you know, fight for this legislation to go through.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. And I'll if you can send me some links, actually, I'll go ahead and put that in the comments below so that you guys out there can see that and maybe join the cause as well.
Absolutely.
So let me take a look through some of our remaining questions, since I think we actually covered most of my questions without actually me asking them. So let's see here. Um, So I guess one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about and to go back to is when it came to the original image itself with the that won the competition with the water bottle and the model. Um, is there anything like what was your kind of frame of mind when you're setting up the composition? Why did you choose this composition in particular? And then how did you kind of adjust your settings for the conditions that were there?
Sure. So I know that I knew going into this shot that it was going to be a trickier shot to get. I just really didn't want to shoot this in a pool and have that pool feeling. I wanted it to be authentic, to be in a spring, to show people that they're taking the water, and then a lot of times, unfortunately, the bottles are ending up right back at our spring. So I shot with like a slightly higher f-stop. I had to use a relatively high shutter as well because as you can see, it was a pretty sunny day, lots of dappled lighting. We were not able to shoot early morning and get that softer light. And also I was in a tree clinging on for dear life. So I'm sure I wasn't the most stable either. So I used a higher shutter and I believe I used my 24 to 70 focal length lens so that way I had the ability to do pullbacks and then tighter crops like this one. This one, I really wanted the model's face to be in the image. I wanted to show her story. She grew up here. She is a native to Gainesville, Florida. She grew up going to the springs. She became a competitive swimmer. She spent her entire life and almost every weekend of it at the springs, enjoying the springs. And it's really heartbreaking to her to see the changes. And so I knew that she was the perfect person to model the shot, and I just told her to lay there, to float as best as she could, and to think about what's happening to the springs. I didn't coach her in any other way. I just sort of gave her some quiet time, backed off a little bit, and let the image play out. The only other thing we did is that as the bottles that were tied together would drift apart, we'd have our helper kind of push them back in towards her. So
Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's how it looks so natural is you basically just gave her the time and space to um have basically have time to herself so that she could like really reflect on the situation.
yeah, this was not a highly staged image. There's no extra lighting, there's no extra people here. It's literally just me, her, and one helper, and we were able to really kind of bring it together organically. I think that's a good word for it. That's the feeling that we wanted. I didn't want it to feel like a forced trope that you see with a lot of images. I wanted it to feel a little more natural, a little more authentic because it is. It is. It's devastating to her personally too.
Right. Um yeah, it's I'd say this image is kind of unique in our conservation category in the sense that it's actually a fashion image, and we have a fashion category, but I think it's that natural look of like, not quite. It's not quite like trying to tell a story, more as showing a story, if that
Right.
makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why I think it was so compelling for conservation and for that category in particular for the judges.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a great way to look at it. It technically could be considered a fashion image, but she has no makeup on. She's not styled in any way. This is the swimsuit that she wears every weekend to the springs. Nothing was purchased for this set. So I hope that that does come through with it.
yeah, yeah, it does. It does, and mostly by her expression.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. One of my questions that I had was, what role do you think underwater photographers play in conservation efforts? And then, have you seen your images influence public opinion or policy or the work that you do?
Oh, wow. Great questions. Okay. So, first and foremost, I think that as an underwater photographer, I am immensely privileged to go places that many people don't get to. So, I did my full technical cave diving training right here in our Florida Springs. And so I get to see places that very, very, very few people on this planet get to visit. And so I think that it's partially my job to share that with them, to bring them in because they can't care about it and want to protect these places if they've never felt a connection with it themselves. So I think that as photographers, we kind of have a unique duty to be able to go into these places, show what's happening through an unbiased, view, put it out there and hopefully help change people's opinions to where they fall in love, they want to protect it, they want to fight for it, even if they personally might not be there themselves or able to see it themselves. So, and then for the second part of your question, I don't know that I have seen a direct impact on policy from my images. I wish desperately that I could say that I could. That would be incredible. However, I do know that these images, personally, we created a traveling display, and the bottle dress that you saw in some of the earlier images, we've created a display. It's traveled around Florida. I think it's even traveled to Tallahassee, along with some large prints from these photos. And we've talked to tons of Floridians, shown them the images, told them what's happening, shared it from our perspective. and been able to give them actionable things and ways to get involved. And I do think that, well, maybe it hasn't made a difference at the legislative level yet. I do think it's made a difference at the community level.
I mean that's huge. That's how you make that policy change and get it to the legislative level. So for those of you that are out there watching, I mean this is your chance to really make something happen, even if it's as simple as just buying a Dasani filtered water instead of spring water. Every little bit does count because well, I mean it's all about how many people you can get on board. So
Right, right. And you
um,
never know who's going to be that one person who will tip the scales.
yeah.
Maybe if enough people switch from spring water to filtered water, they'll be like, "Oh, there's no demand for that. Maybe the bottling factory will shut down and our springs can rebound." We never know the impact that all of us can have together.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I guess just a little bit more about you. Do you have any upcoming conservation projects, workshops, or creative endeavors that you're excited about?
Yes. So I'm always excited because I'm just an enthusiastic person, but I do think we'll be having a really fun project with sharks coming up. And we've also worked on a couple other campaigns that are against keeping whales in captivity that I cannot say more about yet, but I'm hoping that when they launch, we'll be able to share everywhere. And I'm very excited to get people's support with these critical issues, these issues that it's not just affecting one species, it's not just affecting everything is connected.
Right.
So I think that, I'm excited for these other conservation projects. And then also I have two workshops coming up. I teach underwater portrait photography. And so I have a workshop in May, and then I have an underwater modeling workshop in June. So one for photographers and one for models. And I'm always really excited to help raise up the next generation, teach them how to work in this environment as safely as possible, and, be able to start creating more advocates for this kind of work.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see some of your upcoming shark and whale photos then. Um, yeah, well, we can't wait to hear about those endeavors and make sure you keep us updated too. We're happy to put that content out there.
I
Uh,
really appreciate that.
so let's see. I think that's actually all of my questions. Now, one thing I should mention is thanks to Marilux for sponsoring the competition as well. I believe Kimber won a pair of Apollo S strobes.
Yes, and I'm so
Um,
excited.
yeah, so I can't wait to see the photos that you get with those strobes. I know this wasn't a strobe photo, but I'm sure you'll have plenty of other opportunities to use them.
They will be well loved and appreciated at my studio.
Yeah.
So,
And I actually just did a review on the Apollo S. So for any of you guys that are watching that, you can go to probably just two videos back in YouTube and see some more information about that.
oh,
So
I'm going to do that after this. Thank you.
yeah.
That makes my day easier too.
Yeah. Great. So I think that's actually everything that I had. Kimber, is there anything else that you'd like to say or talk about?
I'm really grateful for the platform. Like, thank you so much for having this contest year after year for highlighting smaller creatives, giving us the opportunity to share about things that are important to us, to showcase our work, because this is really the most powerful way for us to get the word out. And you're a huge advocate. So thank you so much for putting out the guide, for continuing to put out great content and promote this contest and competition and letting smaller artists like myself be part of it. So thank you. I'm very grateful and I'm incredibly honored to have placed so high in this competition.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's a team effort. I mean, between our sponsors and us and the competitors, I think the most important thing and one of the things that gets overlooked is underwater photography is such a small niche, but this is our one opportunity to get it out to the masses. So every year we try to have at least 200 media companies share the results of the competition. It's tens of millions of people around the world are seeing this, if not hundreds of millions combined. So between CNN, the Washington Post, Forbes, all of these organizations show our competition every year. So I know we still have some content going out and some coverage going out, but it's nice to be able to highlight you know these kind of issues and maybe most of our viewership right now is underwater photographers, but I'm sure that this story is going out to just more than underwater photographers. So
And you never know. You never know who it will inspire to change careers. I was a scientist and then a nurse before I stumbled into underwater photography.
right.
So life takes us on some tricky, twisting paths, but you never know. Sometimes it's that one thing. I mean, the first time I saw a spring, that was love at first sight for me.
Yeah,
So it's always my hope that you put these images out, you put these things out, you put the education out there. It might inspire and raise up the next generation, and then we can see some real lasting change. So,
exactly. Yeah. It's definitely not too late. And yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for everybody to be involved too.
yes, yes, would love to have everyone involved, and I'm more than happy to talk about how to get involved, and I will send you those links.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, so thank you guys for watching, everybody out there. I will have those links out soon so that you guys can help contribute. And yeah, thanks, Kimber, for joining us today. That's pretty much it. So it was a pleasure having you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much. I will send you everything over, and I'm really grateful again. Very excited about this competition.
Awesome. Well,
All
thanks,
right.
everyone. Have a great day.